Hi, this is Chance Spencer in Eugene, Oregon, and this is part four, Permaculture in Action, Creating a Preferred Future. So this episode, we are going to spend some time looking at some photos I took when I was in Europe. I had an awesome 3-month trip to Europe this past summer, and I did some touristy stuff, but I did a lot of uh, purposeful taking photos and documenting what I was looking at. I've got a big interest in urban land use, and I am started out in Northern Europe and made my way down towards Sardinia. We'll take a look at that. Let's just do screen share here. So this presentation, public places, pedestrians, and pushing back on cars. These are several of my favorite topics. I'm very much interested in urban land use. And that was one of my primary curiosities in Europe. I've been in Europe before several times, and I knew where I wanted to go. So let's just take a look here. This is the fourth of a 5-part series. The previous parts of this series, permaculture, critique of capitalism. We looked at allies, assets, and actions. These are all great stories from all over the country of individuals, organizations, groups of people, what I like to call pioneers of a preferred future, already manifesting a future living more within the boundaries of the natural world and bringing out the best and positive human potential. I love these stories. That was all about those stories in episode 2. Last episode, we took a look at block planning. That's an urban restoration enhancement scheme. Actually, the city of Eugene recognizes block planning. I wish I could say there was lots of block planning going on in Eugene, but there's a number of examples of what block planning can look like. In that last episode, we also looked at pushing back on cars, mostly in the US. We had a little preview of pushing back on cars from Europe. We're going to take a look a little bit more at pushing back on cars in Europe this episode shortly. So all of these are on YouTube. These previous episodes are all on YouTube. This episode will be on YouTube as well. And you can do a screenshot of this picture right here, or you can go to my website, suburbanpermaculture.org, and you can find a link to one of my pages that has all this information right here. And next Saturday, I'm going to do the final part of this series. What are the goals of our society? This is kind of a little bit of a new topic. The approach, given the trends, given the conditions of the environment, the economy, our society. I think it's way past time for a reset. What is this project all about? And that's what next Saturday I'm going to have a presentation and share some thoughts. Don't we really need to have a conversation starting at the personal level to the neighborhood, to the community, to the nation? What exactly are we trying to accomplish with our society, with our economy, what we're up to as human beings? I think it should be looking, we need to be making some very different choices. So that's next week. So let's get back to this. these are just going to be such great pictures. I love show and tell, and these pictures, the ideal is to show what a substantially different culture does with their urban places. Europe has plenty of cars. They got plenty of cars, but it's not exactly the same as in this country here. That's another story. There's a previous presentation I mentioned, pushing back on cars. I get more into the history of pushing back on cars and how did we end up with a society that is ruled by automobiles. How did that happen? It's not an accident. It's purposeful. And Europe experienced some of that too, but not as bad as we have here in the United States. So my trip to Europe, I started out in Groningen and Hoden, and we'll see some pictures in just a minute. These are a couple of towns in Europe that are known for being friendly to lifestyles with using a car a lot less or a car not at all. Groningen and Hoden. Freiburg, there's a neighborhood in Freiburg called the Vauban neighborhood. We'll see some pictures from the Vauban neighborhood. We'll see some pictures of Strasbourg and Paris, actually Descartes near Abbey, a small town in southwest France. A couple pictures, Biarritz. We'll spend a good deal more time in Barcelona. I spent more time in Barcelona. Barcelona was one of my primary destinations. I really wanted to see what their super blocks look like, and I did. And I wasn't disappointed either. There's a long way to go for Barcelona, but they've made a start. I'll show some pictures along the French Riviera, Imperia, just some beautiful examples of public places. I just love this. And up here in the lake region of northern Italy, these towns on Largo Garda and Largo Como. Lago Como, these are glacial lakes in northern Italy, and the towns along these lakes just have some beautiful, wonderful public places. Then after I left northern Italy, I made my way to Corsica and did some bike riding, stayed in several places in Corsica. I spent 4 weeks in Sardinia, and that was one of my primary destinations was Sardinia. So here's a more detailed map. This is Holland. This is Amsterdam here. Groningen is up here. Hoden is down here. You can see the scale. Holland, not such a large country, all mostly flat. And so let's just get started here. Groningen is a university town and known for being very bike friendly. This is just a small street near downtown, the center of Groningen. This is a friend of mine. And you see all these bicycles here. You see there would be a cafe right over here. There are a few cars here, but this is just typical, just a typical small street near the center. This is one of the main streets in Groningen. And you can see there aren't any cars here. There's a good part of Groningen that is car free. And of course, these are all bicycles here and people walking. That's what you're going to see a lot of in most of these photos are people walking, because people do a lot more walking in Europe. This is also Groningen. This is the bike storage area for the train station. This is old building at the train station along here. The train station is just on the other side of these buildings here. So typically in Europe, you would have a train station and you would have buses that come to the train station. to have a synchronized transportation system. You get off the train, and if you need to go somewhere on the bus station is very nearby. And of course, the timing is such that the bus will give you some time from the train to the bus and take you where you need to go. And just all the time, everywhere in Holland, you see large storage, lots of bicycles at the train stations. So that is the train station and the bike area. So another public place, not all public places necessarily have to do with transportation. I focus on that, but I really like the idea of public places. And this here is a location in Groningen, this big new community center. It's about 6 stories high. It's very modern. Wow, the architecture is beautiful. But this location in Groningen is a place where people can come together. There's a library there. There's a place to see movies. There's places for people to meet. There's places to have dinner. There's a great view from on the roof. So public investment, where does a community put its money? And my thinking is that certainly there are public places in the United States, but not as much so as in Europe in terms of urban public places. There's so much private space in the US. That's where more the focus is, on private spaces. And I think from my experience in Europe, there's more investment in public places. This is near Groningen. My friend and I did a big bike ride around this lake. And this is just a restaurant that is on the lake. You can stop, have a pastry, have some tea with a beautiful view of the lake. And of course, there's lots of bike parking. And this is still early May, so this is not summertime. I'm thinking that in the summer, you'd have a hard time finding a place to put your bicycle. But the culture there, of course, in Holland is very much more bicycle oriented. And you would not be able to drive a car just to go to this restaurant. You have to get here on a bike. You can make deliveries with a vehicle, but this is a bike access place right here. And here is a picture of, not far from center of Groningen, people on bikes. Certainly one of the most distinctive features of European cities is outdoor cafes. Outdoor cafes are everywhere. Northern Europe, Southern Europe, everywhere outdoor cafes. People like to sit outside, and it's more pleasant sitting outside when there aren't so many cars around. There would be cars that use these streets here, but not very much. But not to say everything is perfect. In Groningen, just like in the United States, the further you go from the center of town, the more automobile oriented the urban planning becomes. This is less than a mile from all those other nice photos of Groningen. These are big box stores, and this is big box store parking lot. That's not very attractive. This exists too. Like I said, there's plenty of cars in Europe. I saw traffic jams in Holland, freeways, 8 lanes wide, 4 lanes in each direction. They have that, but the urban areas definitely are more oriented towards pedestrians. So I stayed for several days in Amsterdam. And then I stayed several days in Groningen, and I went to Amsterdam, and then I rode my bike from Amsterdam to a town called Houten. And this is just a nothing special location in Amsterdam. There's traffic light signals for the bicycles. This is just on my way out of town, on my way to Houten. And of course, this right here is crossing over a freeway on my way to Houten. There's plenty of this. I went through Utrecht, and this is welcome to Houghton, and this is typical Dutch bicycle facility moving towards between cities. You find this type of bikeway just all over the place. In Holland, you can go from city to city on a bicycle, and this was just coming into Houghton. So this is the center part of Houghton. One of the distinctions with Houghton is that it is a new town. The Dutch authorities told the town of Houghton 40 years ago, you need to prepare for more population increase. So this isn't some old city that dates back 800 years. This is all new. Houghton was enlarged in a purposeful way from about 5,000 40 years ago, and now this is something like 40,000. This is all recent within the last 25, 35 years. It's a big open area here. You have all the commercial, what people need on the ground floor, and this would be residential. This is only part of it. This is only a small part of Houghton, but this is the center part. And there are other parts of Houghton that are a bit more suburban, but there's greater density. When I say suburban, that's Dutch suburban. It's much more dense than American style suburbia. And while I was in Houghton, I did some biking around the area. I biked to Utrecht, which is only about 5-6 kilometers away. Again, this is rural bicycle infrastructure between Houghton and going to Utrecht. And this is going into Utrecht. You can see this is all bike infrastructure for make bike riding safe. When people feel safe riding a bicycle, then more people will ride a bicycle. That goes for anywhere. If we had safer places to ride a bike in the United States, more people would bike. But it's also helpful when the places where you live were closer to where you needed to go. The distance you have to go is an important part of bike ability too. And of course, the European cities aren't nearly as spread out as American cities. Just you don't have to travel as far. And plus, in some parts of Europe, the bike infrastructure, of course, is far better than anywhere in the United States. So more people bike. They also have a little bit more of a bicycle culture as well. And here's just a picture center part of Utrecht. Again, there's bicycles everywhere. I sat here for a half an hour. I did see a couple of cars go by. They go very slow because that's the rules. You just go really slow when you're in town. This is the center part of Utrecht. So this is back to Houghton. And this is the train station. Again, all these bicycles. And this is only a town of something like 30,000. And this is only a small number of the bikes. This bicycle facility was far larger than this. And of course, you take this elevator here with the bike and you go up to another level, and that's where the train is. This is where you go. All those bicycles we just saw is down below. This is the train station right here. So you can put your bike on the train. You can go to Utrecht, Amsterdam. This particular day, I was on my way to Strasbourg. So you're connected. There is not as great a need to have a car as there is here. So there's an impression that, well, European cities are all old and they predate cars. There's, of course, something to that. But historically, back in the post-World War II period in the 50s and 60s, there was the beginnings of some inertia for Europe as they rebuilt after World War II to follow the automobile example of the United States. And some cities, even Amsterdam, invited American highway engineers to come and tell them how they could make their cities modern with automobiles. I saw one example of what could have happened in Amsterdam. Just imagine an LA style freeway going through the middle of Amsterdam. I saw a picture of what that could have looked like, and it's just absolutely amazing. It's just shocking that they were considering building freeways in the cities like what's so common in the United States. Well, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was big automobile pushback. This here is actually a huge rally in Copenhagen of people saying we don't want to have our cities full of automobiles. During that time in the 50s and 60s, there were lots of children, school kids get hit by cars. There were these big demos, and even in the United States. So there was pushback. Europe was more successful with pushback than the United States. But pushback continues as well. So let's see a few pictures here. This is Strasbourg, which is in France, used to be in Germany, but the borders change a little bit over time. And then we'll visit Freiburg. So this is the center part of Strasbourg. Once again, this is a pedestrian area. You won't see any cars here. This is downtown center part next to their just beautiful cathedral. And you can just look at this architecture. I just love the architecture. When people think of visiting Europe, this is the kind of place that they're interested to visit. People don't visit Europe to go look at the parking lots. They go to these places for the most part that don't have any cars at all. And there's all kinds of streets that go out from the center of Strasbourg that are pedestrian streets, like this one right here. This is, geez, some of these buildings are probably a couple hundred years old. It's historic, it's beautiful, it's well maintained. Strasbourg is a good city for riding a bicycle. So after a couple days in Strasbourg, I rode my bike to Freiburg. And this is a canal that parallels the Rhine River. And there's a bikeway. This is a bikeway. Much of it is paved. This particular part is not paved. So I rode my bike to Freiburg and to the Vauban neighborhood. This is just beautiful along here. Of course, it's totally flat. A public place right here. So this is the Vauban neighborhood is home to about 1,500 people. So this is not a city, it's a part of Freiburg. It used to be a French army base. And when the Soviet Union went away years ago, the French army said, we don't need to be here anymore. And that left I think it was like 400 acres of land that the city of Freiburg was able to buy, and they purposefully developed this land to make the residential neighborhood a good place to live without a car. There are people, you can have a car and live in the Vauban neighborhood, but you have to park it in a city parking structure, and that's going to cost you 15,000 euros a year to have your car. 15,000 for a one time. Sorry, it's not per year, but you have to pay a fee and park your car not where you live, but in a city parking structure. Cars can use this area when they're making deliveries, but they can't stay here. They got to do their business and they got to leave. This is just typical. I walked along here many times and you'd see a car or two And these are a little commercial area and then residential as well. So a lot of people moved to the Vauban neighborhood. This goes back to the early 2000s, and attracted by the idea of a place that is easy to live without a car. But many people moved to Vauban because it's a great place to raise kids. I talk with people and they say, well, we moved to Vauban because it's a great place for kids. So you have this high density residential, but then right next to it, you have just wonderful places for kids to play. It's almost like between the buildings, the residential buildings, in between, there were substantial natural areas where kids could explore and kids could play. This is certainly not a wilderness, and it's not like being out in the country, but it's a pretty nice fraction of that, especially for being in an urban location. So this is another picture of Vauban, and this would be a public place right here. I was told that they have events here. There's a restaurant right down here, and what you can maybe see right here, that's where the tram goes. The tram goes through the middle of Vauban, and of course a tram is something like light rail, except it's even a lighter than light rail, kind of like a bus on steel wheels, and of course it's electric. So there's a tram that goes right through the middle of Vauban, and every residential area is within a 3-minute walk of a tram stop. And of course, the tram is frequent enough. You don't have to check a schedule. You just say, oh, it's time to go. And you go out to the tram stop and there'll be a tram. It won't be longer than 5 minutes and there'll be a tram stop. So it's convenient to live without a car there. This shows the tram. Actually, this is the tram. This is residential back here, and this is residential. I'm on a walkway in one of the residential buildings. That's where I stayed with some contacts I had, and this is basically kind of a driveway. You can do deliveries with a car here, but you can't leave your car here. So occasionally you would see a car, but by and large, this is just public area right here, and neighbors would interact. A very nice design, lots of greenery. When they redeveloped from the French army base, they left all the big trees. They removed a lot of the barracks. They kept a little bit of the previous infrastructure, but they built mostly new. So from Freiburg, I went to Paris. Paris has a mayor, Anne Hidalgo, and she is one of her strongest parts of her political platform is making Paris a more walkable city, to redevelop the different areas of Paris so people don't have to transport so much. And of course, that means mostly cars. Of course, Paris has a metro, they have buses, they have trams, they have all of that. It's a very crowded, congested city. Paris doesn't have very many straight streets. To superimpose bicycle infrastructure on Paris is a huge effort. And when I arrived on the train, I had a bicycle with me, by the way. I had a bicycle with me the whole time. I bought the bike in Groningen, and I can put the bike on a train, put the bike on a bus. So I had a bike with me everywhere. And when I arrived in Paris and came out of the big train station, it's a big train station, I knew where I needed to go. And this was the first bikeway that I biked on when I was in Paris. I had to ride about 20 minutes, make a few turns to go where I needed to go. I had some contacts in Paris, but Anne Hidalgo and this effort to make Paris more green, more livable, improve air quality. This is part of that effort. Uh, they had to put bicycle infrastructure where it would fit, and there are lots of different places, some of it a little awkward, absolutely. But the kind of dream is for residential areas to start looking something like this. And I didn't see anything that was really quite like this, but you could see sort of the beginnings, the bike lanes, and you can see here this ideal. You wouldn't have very many cars. I don't know if Anne Hidalgo would actually completely endorse this illustration, but this shows what a more livable, a more humane type of urban location might look like. And of course, this is high density. You would have commercial down here at the ground level, and then you would have a residential up above. This stuff is already here. It's how can the street transition into something that's healthier for people and planet. So this is a park that I went through a number of times. There's lots of parks in Paris, and just all these benches and just lots of people out in the parks. Again, the residential density is much greater. People don't have their own yard to hang out in. If you want to go have some open space, that's what the parks are for. They're much more essential to the neighborhood and the residents, because they don't have so much space like which is typical in much of America. Certainly you would go to a park if you lived in Manhattan or some parts of San Francisco or Chicago. Those are pretty high density too, but Europe is far more densely populated, and parks play a larger role in community life in Europe. And of course, there's the Arc du Triomphe, and what a huge structure that is. Of course, it's a tourist attraction. I went there too and gawked at it just like everybody else. But it's a traffic. There's cars that go all around it all the time. This is my bicycle right here. I was biking around lots of places there in Paris. I love to ride a bicycle. This is the Champs-Élysées, and of course, I don't pronounce that correctly because I'm not French. I don't speak French. But this is the main street. When you see pictures of Paris and hear about Paris, this is their main commercial. There's big streets over here, but this is all very humane. Once again, the outdoor sidewalk cafes, lots of people walking, lots of trees. It's actually very pleasant, but it's also an important place for automobiles too. So you walk a little bit further and there's just monumental, huge open spaces in Paris. The residential is very dense, but there's just giant open spaces. You just wonder, how can they have so much open space? Oh, and there's chairs you can sit. This was still later May, and it was unusually warm the whole time I was in Europe. It was warmer and drier than average everywhere I went. In 90 days, I saw rain on maybe 6 days, and it was warm everywhere. I'm a weather geek. I know what the temperatures should have been like. It was 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than average everywhere I went the whole time I was there. And of course, that's the Eiffel Tower right there. So this is very interesting. You would have the Louvre as back up and over the other side of that hedge. And on the other side of where these cars are is the Seine River. Of course, the Seine River runs through Paris, and it is one of the signatures of Paris, absolutely. Well, what you see right here is, this used to be an automobile place right here. There was this kind of a parkway along the Seine River. I knew about this before I left, before I went to Paris. I knew about this, that this parkway that would have been cars, it's not for cars anymore. They closed it off and it's for bicycles and pedestrians now. So what you see would have been lots of cars going back and forth. There's a tunnel here that goes underneath these this car area here, and then it comes out right along the Seine River, just a few feet above river level. And of course, these are bollards to prevent cars from going in there. So you go through the tunnel, and the tunnel is a quarter of a mile long. It's quite a tunnel. And then you come out, and this is kind of what you see when you come out of that tunnel. This would have been choked with cars up until 7 or 8 years ago. Now is relatively quiet because the cars are up above here. Here's the Seine River. Over here are these buildings on the other side of the river, and there's places to stop, and grab something to eat. There's water right here. This was just so much fun to bike along the Seine River and not have to interact with automobiles. Then here's an older part of Paris, very walkable. You would not have any cars in a place like this. And of course, this attracts people. Certainly this area here predates automobiles. I'm sure the buildings have been upgraded, but I would imagine that you would have had buildings here 500, 600, 700 years ago. So this does predate cars, and they've kept it that way. But certainly a popular place. So I left Paris. My friends I stayed with are part of a group of parents that are trying to have a block up the street from where they live. Their daughter goes to a school just a block away. Virtually everything is closer to where you live, but they're trying to petition the city to close that block to cars just up the street from where they live to be continued. They're working on that. So my new direction after leaving Paris was towards the southwest. I was headed towards Biarritz and a bikeway. The French have bikeways here and there all over the country where much of the bikeway is car free. And I was taking the train to in that direction because I wanted to bike along that bikeway for a few days. This is Orléans, and medium small city, a huge big square here. This is only a fraction of it. This is only 1/10 of it right here. But once again, a big open public place. And this is some of the older area of Orléans. These buildings, I'm guessing, probably date back 500, 600 years right here. And of course, this is cobble here. A few cars, a bike rider going down towards this river. And this is the main street right here. You don't even see any cars. I'm not sure if they're prohibited here, but this is once again a tram. There's a tram that goes through. This is the main street in the city. And where are the cars? They have a tram system, so it's easier to get around without a car. And once again, this is only a medium small city that has a tram system like this. I was just really impressed with that. This is another town I passed through. I would have my bike on a train, and then I'd have to get off the train and wait for a connection to go to another place. And oftentimes I had an hour or 2 hours in that town just to bike around. That's when the bicycle was at its best, that I could just get on my bike and see a lot more of the town while I was there for only an hour or two. But just look at this architecture here. I'm sure these buildings are 300 or 400, 500 years old. Again, outdoor cafe, again, pedestrian, no cars would be allowed here. This was very common. This is another town. This is Descartes, and about 6 kilometers from where a friend of mine lives. My friend lives in a much smaller town. They live in Abi, which is just a nearby, but this is the market town. There was a big once a week market here in Descartes, and I wanted to check that out. This is not a destination for tourists. I was probably the only tourist there, but it is a community event. It's in the little downtown area of Descartes, and vegetables, clothes. This right here, kind of a pop-up cafe out here along the street. Another cafe over here. Most of the market action was up this way, but just lots of people out buying, and the merchants. And it kind of made me think this is a descendant of the fairs and the commercial areas and the culture of back in the Middle Ages. This has a lot in similarity with 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago. People have been buying and selling for a long time. It's part of the human experience. And to be in a small town and seeing this was just really, I really enjoyed that. I bought some cheese here. I was leaving to continue towards the Atlantic Ocean, but this type of small town, once a week, big market is just typical all over France. Other towns would be having something like this. This just happened to be one place that I was near and had access to, but very, very human scale. And you wouldn't have any noise of cars back here. The merchants are selling oftentimes what they produce, artisanal cheeses and breads, a fair amount, also biologic, that's their word for organic. So this was just great to just have a little time here in a small town market day. And this is Descartes, and I'm biking over this bridge on my way to a train station that's about 15 miles away. It just looks really nice. I saw no franchise fast food kind of place here. It's just not there. So it's really a relief to see a slower pace of life, or at least it looked that way anyway to me. I enjoyed it. So I did bike along the Atlantic for several days, and I ended up in Biarritz. And this is before the primary vacation season, but this is the beach, and there would be the ocean just over here. And I can imagine that when it is July and August, which is peak season for tourism, it's a bit warmer. I would imagine both during the day and in the evening, there are thousands of people in this kind of lungomare. That's Italian for along the sea, along the water. A public place here. It's pretty vacant right here, but I'm sure there are times, this is right in Centro, this is the center part of Biarritz as well. I'm sure there are times where there's lots of people there. So I was kind of only passing through. It turns out that I needed to go through Madrid to get to Barcelona. That's another travel story. But one of the stops I made on the train was this town I hadn't even heard about anything of Victoria, Spain. Certainly not a big destination. And of course, this is their main street right here, just a regular town in Spain, and this completely car-free pedestrian street here in Victoria, Spain. I spent a few hours here waiting for the train. So my next stop would be Barcelona. Barcelona is in northeast Spain. but many people in Barcelona would say, we're not in Northeast Spain, we're in Catalonia. There is absolutely a separatist feeling in Barcelona. There's a different language, and Barcelona, the locals will speak Catalonia with each other. They're not speaking Spanish. Of course, they know Spanish, but there's definitely a sense of we're Catalonia, we're not Spain. So I had a chance to experience a little bit of that. This is the center part of Barcelona. And of course, Barcelona is certainly one of Europe's most well-known cities. There are cruise ships that come into Barcelona and just dump thousands of people. There's pushing back on that. I don't live there, so I don't know what it's normally like. My visit again was before the main tourist season, but I think the statistics are something like in the year 2000, Barcelona may have had 2 or 3 million visitors over the course of a year. Now it's like 18 or 20 million. A lot of people are feeling like there's too many tourists in Barcelona. I saw some graffiti that said tourists go home. It certainly brings a lot of money to Barcelona, but the fact is Barcelona is really a beautiful city. I'd have to say it's my favorite big city in Europe. It has great bicycle infrastructure. It's really well maintained. There's unbelievable architecture. The urban area, I stayed mostly in this part of Barcelona, the Gracia neighborhood with some friends. Sagrada Familia right there, Barceloneta, these beaches along here, La Rambla. But actually some of my favorite places in Barcelona were small public places I'd never even heard of. They were just near where I was staying. A little orientation. This graphic compares Atlanta with Barcelona. Okay, so what? Well, this graphic is in scale. This is the amount of space that Barcelona takes up. This is the amount of space that Atlanta takes up. This is in scale. This is how big Barcelona is compared to Atlanta. Atlanta takes up something like 25 times more space, its urban footprint, because so much of this is suburbia. And they both, of course, have similar populations. So this is American style urban area. This is Barcelona, and Barcelona's densely populated even by European standards. So this may not be completely true, the 25 times for any European city, but my bet is that compare a typical American city with a counterpart in Europe of similar size, and the American city is going to be 15 or 20 times larger because it's automobile dominated. And of course, interestingly, Barcelona and Atlanta have about the same distance of metro, and this is the density of metro in Barcelona, and this is the same miles or kilometers of metro in Atlanta. It sure doesn't reach much of town. To have this level of metro subway service in Atlanta, there's not enough money to pay for that. And of course, people are in their cars anyway. But the take-home message here is that the future of these automobile-dominated cities is not a bright one. There's just not enough money to repair what this country, what the United States has constructed. This could be Houston, Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, any large medium city in the United States would be similar to Atlanta right here. There's no solution to this. We have constructed urban places where personally, I don't think there's a there's a bright future at all. So once again, I'm out of the train station, and this is my first experience of biking in Barcelona. And here it is. The streets over here, you have bikes and motorcycles to give the bike riders a little bit more protection from the traffic. And this isn't even one of the more attractive streets either. There's far more attractive, uh, but I found bike riding in Barcelona to be just great. And I found that there are residential areas that I just I just hadn't had an experience like this before. This is the street where my friends live. They live about 6 blocks further in this direction here. These are all commercial areas. There's a coffee shop, there's a movie, there's grocery stores, there's lots of cafes. Um, there's the basic needs that you have within walking distance. This is totally car free. This is Gracia neighborhood. And I saw other neighborhoods that were similar to this too. But this isn't anything special. This is just the way it is there. And of course, this small street predates cars. It probably, looked something like this 3 or 4 or 500 years ago. So I'm sure this predates cars. They kept it that way. But this is just so humane. You have people living up here. So I went up and down this street just lots of times. I was there only for about a week, but I started to feel a little bit familiar with these places. And it's quiet and places to sit and trees, just really humane. This is a larger main street in Barcelona. This is St. John, and this goes from near Gracia neighborhood down to the beach. It's all downhill going down to the beach. Barcelona is basically on a big slope. If you're down at the beach and you want to go anywhere in Barcelona, you're going to have to go uphill, but it's a gradual slope. But this is such a beautiful, there's a street over here and there's the other direction over here, but it's a promenade. There's places to sit. There's a little bit of landscaping between the promenade and the street. There's also a bike lane on the other side of the shrubbery that's along by the street, but there's a curb for the bike lane too. So it's good protection from the cars, and the cars can only go something like 15 or 18 miles an hour anyway. They're not going fast. So when you're here, you hardly know there's any cars there. They're not honking horns. It's pretty quiet. Again, there's lots of trees. There's playgrounds along here. Every so often there's playgrounds. There's places, a tap, you can get water. And of course, as you see these people here, a lot of people just like to come out, meet their neighbors, and just people watch. Certainly a popular pastime almost anywhere is people watching. So this is just one of my favorite parts of Barcelona right here. It's just really humane. You continue towards the Mediterranean and that promenade comes to an end, and then you have the bikeway is in the median between those two lanes of traffic. Some people don't like having the bikeway between the streets. Well, this is what they had, and it's well marked, it's safe. Perhaps not the most ideal, but it certainly works. Some would say the bike lanes need to be wider, probably so, but still, this is a very easy, convenient, safe place to ride a bicycle from where I start in Gracia to the beach. It's probably something like 3 kilometers, and it's bikeway all the way. So it's a pleasant experience. And these, a little bit further towards the Mediterranean, This is a big park area and just beautiful, beautiful public places. I think public places sort of reveal something about the city where they're located. Uh, I just I just so much enjoyed just seeing these places. I like exploring. So I don't know the history of this structure here, for example, but there's a lot of people. You find these different types of electric scooters or these things that have two wheels and you balance on them. You see uh, squadrons of those types of vehicles where, you know, might be a tour group and you see 15 electric scooters go by at one time. It's all pretty humane, people going pretty slow. Of course, there's no cars here, but I just I just love to see what a city has, and Barcelona has a lot, and it's really accessible, whether you're with a bike or there's buses and there's metro too. So it's not just bicycles there. And of course, this is along the Mediterranean right here, uh, bike lanes, lots of places for people to walk. Again, this is by this time, it's probably early June. I went swimming. The water's cool, but not cold. A lot of people out on the beach. So this is part of Barcelona. It's on the Mediterranean. And I love the Mediterranean, but it's accessible. Um, the the street is back away from the beach, so you have this just really nice promenade, again in Italian, a lungomare, and another area you can walk down here as well. Just nice urban design. So this is another part of Barcelona, um, the Gothic quarter. I'm sure this area is hundreds of years old, and this, I'm sure there's a name for this particular placa. There's a fountain. I'm sure a lot of these people don't live in Barcelona, but if I was a visitor, I'd want to see stuff like this. That's why I was there. I just loved it. Just these palm trees, the architecture, no cars here, and the just people walking, again, pedestrians here. And Barcelona is known for this place called La Rambla, and this is a walkway. It's just one of the most popular places to walk. It's a promenade between two streets. Actually, St. John is more attractive than this, but this is a a destination in Barcelona. Can you imagine? One of the primary tourist destinations in Barcelona is a place to walk. A little bit smaller scale. This is back in Gracia, a placa, which basically is a plaza, a piazza. This is all residential around here, just this playground. And a lot of people ride bicycles to get to this playground area. So again, probably most of these people don't have a yard to have a play space. So they have a neighborhood park like this. And the upside of that is that you see your neighbors, you meet people, and it's a smaller ecological footprint as well. But I just saw so many different examples of that kind of uh, urban landscape. Here's another placa right here, places to sit. There's a little playground over here. You'd see young people, older people, a bike might ride through here. You got these kids climbing up on this wall here, all surrounded by residential, lots of trees, no cars. It's just a beautiful place. It's a whole different kind of urban existence. Here's another one. In Gracia, there are probably dozens of placas like this. And I just love to ride my bike around and just find places like this and just enjoy the scenery and enjoy there are people who are enjoying themselves just being here. Let's see, this little slider here, I need to get back to. It kind of has a little bit of a mind of its own. Yeah, and here's a placa at night as well. Wow, warm and balmy in the evening in Barcelona, even early June. It was t-shirts was all you really needed. So once again, we're back on Verdi, this small street where my friends live a little bit back behind me. And there's some kind of an artistic organization has one of these spaces, and they're out on the sidewalk and they're doing this kind of paper mache. And the there's a big celebration that happens in Barcelona. My friend explained to me, and the different neighborhoods compete with each other. And part of the celebration is making human-sized figures to illustrate whatever they illustrate. But this artist organization is doing their assembly of this paper mache out on the street. And of course, people stop and there's conversation. It's fun to see this kind of culture, this sort of way of life. I can only admire a place that has this sort of capacity of people walking and the people doing the constructing here. So this really builds community. I love that. So this is another placa. This is probably my favorite one. I spent a lot of time here just sitting on a bench. I'm sitting on some stone steps, and there's a big church right behind me. But there's down here, there is the cafe. There's a cafe here. There's water here. I saw kids on scooters and kicking soccer balls around. No cars here at all. There's no cars on this street down here. So, and of course, this is all residential all around. I just find this to be very attractive. And of course, there's other parts of transportation in Barcelona. This is the train I arrived on. This was actually a fast train. This was the train from Madrid. This train was doing 250 kilometers an hour, about 150 miles an hour. And of course, there are freeways in Barcelona. This happens to be on the way to the airport when I was leaving, but I'm not leaving yet. There's just different ways to make your way around Barcelona. So I want to share this little part about Barcelona. This is one of the main reasons I went to Barcelona, the super illes, the super islands in Catalan, in English known as the super blocks. Barcelona has what's called an urban mobility plan, and the thrust of this urban mobility plan, which dates back about 15 years, is to reduce the use of automobiles in Barcelona. This is what the city's trying to do. So this is Barcelona. You can see this is pretty densely populated. These are all 6, 7, 8-story buildings here. And Barcelona, unlike Paris, Barcelona is mostly built on a grid, and it lends itself to super blocks. Their effort to reduce automobile use a little bit may be easier than Paris, but a super block is 9 of these residential blocks, and this could be I don't know, 20, 30,000 people might live within this 9-block area. So it looks like the top one side of a Rubik's Cube is what a super block looks like. It's 9. So the exterior of the super block are intended to be streets you can go from one part of town to another. They're through streets. These are major streets. Within the super block, the speed limit is like 15 kilometers an hour, and uh, only vehicles that have owners that live in the super block can go into this area. Where the blue is, that's only for delivery, emergency, and people who live there. So the idea is to calm the interior of the super block. And then even more, this is an intersection in the super block right here. Um, you're slowing the traffic down, but at the same time, you're taking a good amount of where cars are right now, and you're repurposing that automobile space to bikes, to pedestrians, for playgrounds. Cars can still go in here, but they can only go like this. They can't go across the intersection. They can only go like this. So that's a big change. It's to discourage use of cars, but at the same time, the urban mobility plan is improving other modes of transportation as replacements for automobiles. So if you follow this line right here, this fuchsia line right here, this goes to the next slide. There's that same line right there. And you remember that red indication of where there's an intersection. Just for example, this is the intersection. I don't say that it's the same one from the previous slide, but this is what that intersection redevelopment looks like, where you see the swing set and the slide and the bike and the plants. This used to be a busy automobile intersection with cars and exhaust and all the noise. It's a playground now. A car can start over here and go along here and go around over here, but that's all they can do. They can't go across the intersection. There's a playground in the way. This is really exciting. And Barcelona is just in the very early going. They've done, I think, 7 or 8 super blocks. They have like maybe 200 to go. They're at the very early. But this, to me, from what I know of Europe, excites me the most about places pushing back on cars. Certainly pushing back on cars comes in a lot of different ways, but Barcelona's approach is very bold, and just to be able to see what this looks like. Here's another intersection. It could have looked something like this a few years ago, maybe 7 or 9 years ago. This intersection might have looked like this. There would have been cars and trucks right here, right where these kids are kicking a soccer ball. This is a repurposed intersection to build community, to improve air quality, to have a place near where people live, where they can get out and move around, because from what I've read, Barcelona does not have so much space for parks. They're taking what they have available, which is too much space for automobiles, and they're making that available to people who live in these neighborhoods. So this is another street. This would have been, you got planters, you got benches. This would have been car parking not too many years ago right here, and it is pedestrian now. This is in the Poblano neighborhood where I showed those pictures Verde, where my friends live. That's not a super block. That's just the way that neighborhood is. But I saw other streets that looked like this too, that at one time they were full of cars, and some of them, there's still cars, but they go slow, and there's less space for cars and more space for people and bikes and walking and just enjoying being outside and meeting your neighbors. I really like the super blocks. This was just a few. You can go on YouTube and search super blocks, and you can find videos that explain all this. It's really wonderful. So it's really nice to have urban design that facilitates people enjoying the urban space and making friends. I was sitting on this bench right here, and the Mediterranean's just behind the person taking the photo right here. And this woman here said, "Do you mind if I sit on the bench?" Of course, I said, "No, you're welcome to sit on the bench." She lives not far from here and told me this is her bench. She comes here just because she likes to sit and watch the people and see the Mediterranean, which is just behind us. The beach is just right behind us. So we started talking. She was actually from Colombia, South America, and and we had just fun conversations. She's really a nice person. Told me about her life, but having this kind of urban amenity, people can make friends and just enjoy whatever time they have there together. She had to leave, I had to leave, have a good life, but just really nice to have made that acquaintance and shared a little bit about our lives. So, let's see. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I love Barcelona. It's just such a beautiful place to be. It resonates with me. So I left Barcelona and my next destination was Toulon, France. We'll see a few pictures from Toulon. This is the French Riviera, and I rode my bicycle from Toulon to Nice. That was, I slept in campgrounds along the way, 3 nights. I wasn't going very fast, but I had a chance to see some of these flashy, like Cannes, Nice, Monte Carlo is up this way, and I was going to Imperia, Italy. So let's just see. Yeah, and this is the Côte d'Azur on the French Mediterranean right there. So this is a bikeway in Toulon. Not so many people on the bikeway. I wouldn't think from what I saw that Toulon is a big destination for riding bikes. This is my friend Alain. He's French. He lives in Toulon and also a big bike rider as well. So he took me around Toulon and we had a great time. This picture here in the center area of Toulon, certainly a car-free, nice artwork, all these colorful kind of origami hanging above the street, just really pretty. This would be the older part of Toulon as well. And Alain showed me this big mural of the kind of historical, shows different ways people made a living maybe 300 or 400 years ago. This is in central Toulon public place. This is another kind of a plaza. Um, these are some famous people from Toulon, and you can stop and sort of join their conversation if you just sort of imagine that they are animated. Another really nice public place. This is, again, a huge open square in the center part of Toulon. I wish that I had somebody to throw the Frisbee with here, but again, Toulon is residential density. So this is just a big open space. Elaine told me there have been all kinds of political, social, cultural events happen in a big place like this. And this is a park that we went to. We brought along a lunch just to have a picnic. These two guys were already at that table, and we asked if we could sit down too, and they said, sure, of course. They're a couple French guys, couple professionals, and they're just out on their lunch break. They both happen to speak English pretty well. So we just had some conversation and made acquaintance, and it was really fun just to meet these guys. We talked for probably 15 or 20 minutes, and they were curious about my bike riding. And so we just made acquaintance. And after a while, they had to get back to work. But again, a an urban design that facilitates people and enrich each other's lives, and very enjoyable that way. So I left Toulon on my bicycle, and this would be Cannes right here. Uh, I just saw this repeatedly. This is a lungomare along the ocean right here. This is the Mediterranean, pretty glamorous kind of a place, and I'm on my bicycle, looking like a low budget traveler, which of course I am, but just fun to see the French Riviera. And after a few days, I came to Nice. This is the Promenade des Anglais, the English promenade. This promenade dates back 150 years. And this hotel here is one of the iconic locations of Nice. Let's see. Yeah, okay. And this is the Promenade des Anglais. And a little bit of shade. Of course, it was warm. I'm guessing it was probably in Fahrenheit, it was probably 85 degrees, not super hot, but warm enough that you appreciate the shade. So once again, another nice public space right there. I biked around a little bit in Nice, and totally unexpectedly, I came upon this. This is a lane of traffic on a city street that's been repurposed for automobiles. You have these planters here to keep the cars out of there, to create some bit of screening between the bikeway and the traffic. But this would have been cars parked here, cars traveling here, but now that space is occupied for bicycle and calming the street. So walking over here on this side of the street is more pleasant than it used to be. I didn't expect to see this, but I did. And here's another couple of examples of reclaiming the street, taking car space and calming it and making space for bicycles here. This is in Nice right here. And this is another huge public open space in Nice. And you just see all these people walking. I think this is maybe a street here, but you don't see very many cars there, but just this huge, big public open space. And this was in that same area. I don't know how many fountains here there are, maybe 100 fountains, but on a nice warm day like this, it's fun to get into the water like this. So this is Nice, just another big public space. So I left Nice and it was getting late in the day, and I put my bike on a train and I went to Imperia in Italy. So I finally got into in Italy, and I stayed in Imperia for about 3 days. This is in the downtown area of Imperia, area Pedonale. Bicycles can't even go into this area. I walked my bike in here. You don't even ride a bike in here. This would certainly be the old part of town right here, but a nice commercial and people walking in that area. Another really pleasant public place in Imperia. These are mulberry trees. Of course, this is the Mediterranean. There's lots of palm trees and just a nice park. That's all this is. It's just a nice park. I was just out exploring and I came out, oh, what a nice park. So I hung out here a little bit. There's a part of Imperia that's up on a hill, the older part of Imperia, for probably defensive reasons. 600, 700, 800 years ago is built up on a hill, which is a little bit easier to defend because there were pirates in the Mediterranean at times that would come to coastal cities and they would sack the city and take off, whatever was valuable. So I explored this hill part of Imperia, and I just love to explore towns in Europe, particularly Italy. And I'm sure these stones, these walls here date back quite a number of hundreds of years. Some of them are archways and protected from the weather. This is a nice little library that somebody put out. And here's some chairs. Just take a break and sit down and read something right there. I just thought that was so attractive right there. And this another part of the hill area of Imperia. Just people care about where they live. Just these potted plants. It's all nice and tidy. I just love a place like this. You can just go and walk and explore as long as you want to. So I did some other bike riding near Imperia. This is a beachside piazza, little public art right here. I just really liked this little piazza. The beach is just off to the left. You can't see it, but there's outdoor cafe, benches, nice landscaping. So once again, another very attractive public place. I did leave Imperia. My next destination was the lake areas of northern Italy right here. So let's advance this. Okay. Yeah, here's a little enlargement right here. Here's Milano. I took a train to Milano. Here's Lago Garda. Over here, the distance you can see, that's about 5 miles. So this is a smaller area, but I took the train to Descenzano, which is the southern end of Lago Garda. Did a little bike riding, and then I took the ferry over a period of a couple of days up to Trento and came back along Lago Garda again, and then up here to towards the Sentiero Valtellina. This is a bikeway along a river here. And then I went to Lago Como. These are popular places to go to. They're beautiful. These are all mountains all along here. These are glacial lakes. Back in the Ice Age, the glaciers came down from the mountains here. It's really dramatic. So beautiful. I've been wanting to visit this part of Italy for a long time. So this is the train station in Milano, a public place, one of other train stations in Milano too. Larger European cities have multiple train stations. So a lot of people traveling by train. So here's Descenzano, definitely a place that people go to along the lake. Time after time, I saw these lungomare, the promenade here, where people landscaped benches. The lake is right here. The street's way back here. It's nice and quiet. I just saw examples of that so many times. Here's another public area. At this point, I'm on a ferry. I put my bike on a ferry and I'm going towards Riva del Gardo and then on to Trento. But being up on the top of this ferry just gives you a really great viewpoint when you come into these other small towns along the lake, and people get off the ferry and people get on the ferry. The lake itself, Garda, I think, is something like about 60 miles long, and it's a big lake, and there's just different towns along the lake. It's really beautiful. And this is at the destination. This is Riva del Garda at the northern end of the lake. And again, places where people can walk. Can you imagine having lunch or dinner here and you've got this view? The lake is off to the left. The mountains just go straight up, and just a beautiful public place right here. So I could ride my bicycle to Trento. Trento was about 30 miles, and this is a public bikeway right here. Look at this vineyard, these mountains on the side of the valley. I was just in awe of riding a bicycle along here. It's all uphill, not too steep, up to Trento. Just beautiful. I have a friend who lives in Trento. So this is Centro, the center part of Trento, right here, a big fountain and a couple of cars, not too many. This is by far mostly pedestrian and bicycle right here. And these older buildings have all kinds of murals. Uh, I'm sure these date back to the Renaissance right here. Trento, a very pretty town. And here are some other pictures of Trento. Again, as I emphasize, so many places that are walkable. This is just a big flea market. My friend and I went to this. Essentially, it's just a big flea market. So you would just see flea market kind of stuff. And this was only a part of it right here. But again, it's all very walkable. This is another area in the center part of Trento. I'm sure a car could go down here on occasion, but most of the time you don't see any cars. You see bikes, you see people walking, you see people out here in their sidewalk, street side cafes. So I was there in Trento for several days, had a wonderful time. It was time to move on. This is back to Riva del Garda, where I'd been before. And this is the north end of the lake. And again, a public beach, just beautiful public spaces. Just anybody can go there. I took the ferry back to Descenzano, and this is Descenzano at nighttime. It's warm. I had a great pizza that night. I think it was maybe in this cafe over here, but just really pretty. People out walking. It's just enjoyable to be in a place that's nicely maintained and there's not any cars. So I did the Sentiero on my bicycle, and okay. Okay, well, I went to Bergamo, which is northern Italy. That's near Milano, near Lago Como, and a friend of mine here in Bergamo. So this is a walkable pedestrian area of Bergamo. Certainly this small street predates cars by probably centuries, and it's nice that it's kept that way too. And here in Bergamo, a big piazza. Wow, there are some historical buildings here. You just see historical buildings all over the place in Italy. They're doing some kind of development construction project. I'm not sure, but once again, a big piazza there in Bergamo. So I was leaving northern Italy, and we're coming up on the home stretch of the presentation. I know there's lots of pictures, so you can always take a break. But I left Bergamo, and my next destination was Corsica. And this is Italy back up here. I took a ferry from Livorno to Bastia, and this orange line you see here, that is by bicycle. I did a good deal of biking there in Corsica, and here's the scale. That's 10 miles right here. So north to south, Corsica is probably 70, 80 miles, something like that. I've been in Corsica before. I had biked along here before, 40 years before that. I wanted to go back. It's beautiful. Corsica is very up and down. So one town I visited briefly, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ville Russi. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that. But the town has this very nice promenade and a beach. This is the Mediterranean back here, has a big plaza in the middle. I love the palm trees. Of course, there's palm trees everywhere along the Mediterranean. So these are just some nice public places in this particular town. I did spend a couple days in Calvi, and this location by the harbor, they were having a jazz festival, just my good luck. And there was a jazz band, really nice music, some people dancing, certainly a lot of people having beer, but of course, celebrations and public events in a public place. What can be better with good music? I really enjoyed that. And this is another location in Calvi. The jazz was just back behind here near the base of this citadel. This is actually called the Citadel back here. But this is the quiet time of the day. But later in the day, this is just going to be full of people in the cafes. And the harbor is just off to the right here. Certainly in these places I'm showing, there are natural amenities that enhance the experience of being there. I like water. I like being along the shoreline. And of course, that's where I spent a lot of my time. A lot of these places are destinations for people to go visit and stay because they are attractive. They are beautiful. There's all kinds of, I hiked around up here in the Citadel, and just it's beautiful, just these old architecture. So it's certainly not to suggest that every town or small city in Europe has quite this level of public places and attraction. But the fact is, they all have something. They may not have the Mediterranean or a river or a lake, but they all have something. I know that because that's just part of their culture. So let's move on to Sardinia. I've been in Sardinia before, but this particular visit to Sardinia, I go to new places I haven't been before. This is where I went in Sardinia. Here again, the scale. Sardinia is maybe half again the size of Corsica, the second largest island in the Mediterranean. And my first destination was a town named Alghero, and Alghero, of course, is on the coast. It's a town of about 50,000. What you see here was a street right along the water. Of course, there's a promenade here. There's a really nice bikeway right here. But even more, they closed off this street. This may be seasonal. Of course, this is tourist season. I don't know if this street is closed off in the wintertime when it's, of course, a lot cooler. But at this time, it's closed off to cars, and these cafes are have dinner where there's sometimes at least there's cars. So I consider this to be a nice little small local example of pushing back on cars. And Alghero has lots of pedestrian areas. This is a big pedestrian area here, no cars here. This is another important pedestrian area. Lots of cafe, the lungomare. I think that the lungomare in Alghero is my favorite. It goes for like a couple of miles. There's lots of different parts to the lungomare in Alghero. This is part of it here. They had these in this public place, a trebuchet, one of these catapults that would throw a big stone block at invading ships, hoping to discourage them. These sort of items of interest along the Lungomare. And of course, there's people just walking around. It's warm in the evening. On the other side of this wall is the Mediterranean. It's just such a beautiful scene. The Lungomare, a part of it here in Alghero, the streets over here. There's a bikeway right here. There's nice landscaping to screen the cars. It's just a beautiful place. And here, this structure, about 600 years old right here. This is in the center part. Whoops, we inadvertently moved that around a little bit. But anyway, a popular place in Alghero right there. This is very close to the center part of town. And then, of course, this is another scene at night. Cafes, people just walking, no cars at all. It's just such a beautiful. So I went several other places in Sardinia. This is one town I stopped in waiting for a train. This is Iglesias, a place before this visit to Sardinia, I'd never even heard of our Iglesias. I'm guessing the population, maybe 25,000, something like that. But this is their old town, and these umbrellas, walkable cafe, no cars. Once again, I'm just exploring with an hour before the train, and just discover these beautiful, just wonderful, friendly, artistic public spaces here. And this is the main piazza in Iglesias right here, just people walking across, and there's cafes around in some locations, and then benches. Of course, there's my bicycle right there. Just so humane. Another place that I didn't know about before this trip was a little town called Mara, and this is only a village, but this is Mara's public space right here. You have a plaza and this beautiful view off to the mountains. This would be a stage. I'm sure there are times when there's events and pageants that are put on right here. I was in Mara because there was a weekend event at a location here in Mara that had something of a permaculture connection to it. So that's why I was in Mara. I think the place's population is only several hundred, but still no ocean, no Mediterranean, but still a very attractive public place. And the people are friendly as well. These are some town people and also some people who came to this event that happened there in Mora. And these are all Italians. And I would come to know some of these people are friends now that I met while I was there. So, but brought together by a very nice public space. So by this point, I am needing to make my way back to Barcelona because that's where my plane would leave. I've been in Italy at this point for something like almost 3 months. I went back to Alghero for a couple more days. And from Alghero, I went to a nearby town called Sassari. And that's one of the larger cities of Sardinia. And this is Piazza Castello. There used to be a castle down here that's gone. They removed the historical landmark, but there's a really great place to get ice cream over here, and benches. There's no Mediterranean here, but this is just a big public square in Sassari. There's banks and buildings and municipal offices, but just a nice place to sit. And I stayed in Sassari a couple days, and one day I went out of Sassari with my bicycle and ended up biking to Osilo, which is only about 10 or 12 miles away. It's a hill town. I biked up to this hill town. Fortunately, I didn't have all the gear that I normally carry. So I was able to go up to this hill town. In this picture, Sassari's kind of back over this way. But this is a small little public space. Somebody takes care of these plants, and there's a bench. I could have gone and sat here if I wanted to. I probably could have oriented the bench to look out that way. But I thought, wow, this laundry really has a nice view. So that was in Oslo. I did go back to Sassari for another day and took the bus to nearby Porto Torres. And that's where there's a ferry that takes 12 hours to go to Barcelona. I went back to Barcelona, stayed with my friends for several days, and I flew back to Eugene from Barcelona. This is my last picture right there. I just so enjoyed the public places. People walking, people mixing, people mingling, just so humane. I just like urban places that are meant to be enjoyable for people to be. And certainly we have some of those in the US, absolutely. But Europe is more evolved in that direction. And I have to think a big part of that is transportation and our urban design. There's just a need for public places. That's just part of their culture in Europe, that they have these public places. And our culture, to a much greater degree, has been much the consequence of commercial interests imposing automobiles on our urban places. Cars have been imposed on our society, much to our great disadvantage. It's certainly difficult to live without a car. That's the intention. Are we ever going to have a chance to repair that? Even in this country, there's efforts to make some kind of effort to make our cities more humane and less automobile dependent. Lots of cities talking about it, some cities doing little bits and pieces of that. I think we can look to Europe for inspiration. So again, here is my website for links to other parts of this series of presentations. I will also do a presentation next week. This will all be on YouTube, these already on YouTube. What are the goals of our society? I think we need a major discussion, a reset. What are the goals for our society? I think we can do better than what we live in. So that's a sort of a new way, a new approach to how do we move towards a preferred future. This is a little new turf for me, sort of intellectually. So that will go on YouTube. I still have a lot of work to do on this. So I appreciate your attention. Awesome pictures. I love to do the show and tell. It's just inspiring to see these beautiful places. Humans are totally capable of creating beautiful places and being peaceful and cooperative. Certainly have that opportunity. And I think that how we design where we live has a lot to do with our lifestyles and our economy and the future as well. So this is Jan Spencer here in Eugene, Oregon. Thanks for being here. Have a good one. Be well. Thanks. Bye.